If you've ever felt like the world around you is a theater play you never auditioned for, if you've ever looked at people and wondered if they truly believe what they're saying, if you've ever felt like social interactions are a rehearsed choreography where you're the only one who doesn't know the steps, then this video is for you. And if you've never felt that way, maybe it's time to ask yourself if you're truly being yourself, or just a reflection of what others expect. Because today, we're going to talk about something few dare to admit. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher of pessimism, understood this with brutal clarity. The human being does not seek truth. It seeks to fit in. We dress, speak, and act, following an invisible script, not because it's our essence, but because we've been taught that acceptance is more important than authenticity. But here comes the question. Acceptance from whom? Think about this. How many times have you smiled when you didn't feel like it? How many times have you nodded in a conversation that didn't interest you? How many times have you felt that society is an unspoken contract where you pay with your identity just to belong? Now, what really matters, at what cost? Schopenhauer said it bluntly, clear intelligence and social life are in conflict. The more intelligent you are, the less sense the charade makes. Not because you're arrogant, but because you see what others don't. You see the masks. You see the lies disguised as politeness. You see the fragility of a world where everyone builds their identity around the approval of others. And the most unsettling part, you see that most people prefer not to question it. Society isn't designed to teach you how to think. It's designed to keep you distracted. Because when you start thinking too much, you begin to notice the contradictions. You start to realize that many relationships are illusions, that most conversations mean nothing, and that the effort to fit in is actually a form of self-sabotage. And here lies the dilemma. If you're smart enough to notice this, then you're also smart enough to feel the loneliness it brings. Let's be honest. The more you think, the less you fit in. And people feel it. They sense that you don't join in the collective hysteria. They sense that you don't participate in social rituals with the same blind devotion. And that bothers them, because your mere existence threatens the bubble they live in. Schopenhauer said it clearly. Solitude is the fate of all great minds. And that hurts. It hurts because society teaches you that happiness lies in connecting with others, that you need friends, social circles, to belong. But what happens when most of those connections are empty? What happens when you realize the price of socializing is mediocrity? What happens is that you start seeking something more. You begin to withdraw. You start valuing your time more than the approval of others. And here's where something interesting happens. At first, solitude feels like a punishment. But then it becomes a privilege, because in solitude, you discover something society tries to hide at all costs: peace of mind. Schopenhauer understood this better than anyone. For him, intelligence was not just a blessing, it was also a curse. The more you understand the world, the less it excites you. The more you see human nature, the less you want to be part of its game. And this is where many go wrong, thinking this message is a call to misanthropy, that it's about hating people or rejecting all social contact. But it's not. It's about understanding the difference between interaction and obligation. It's about giving yourself permission to choose when and with whom to socialize, instead of just following what's expected of you. It's about accepting that true intelligence does not need external validation. But here comes the most interesting part. When you stop seeking acceptance, something changes within you. People notice. They see that you're not desperate to fit in, that you don't depend on their approval, that your world doesn't fall apart if you're not invited to the next party. And that confuses them, because most people live trapped in the need to be seen, heard, approved. And you, by not playing that game, become an enigma that intimidates, an enigma that intrigues. Because the irony of it all is that the less you care about social validation, the more power you have over it. True freedom begins when you no longer care what others think of you. So the next time someone tells you that you should socialize more, that you should try harder to be more sociable, that you should be like everyone else, remember this: you're not the one who's wrong. You're just someone who has seen the truth. And the truth, for most people, is too uncomfortable to accept. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Because when you realize that you don't need to socialize, when you truly internalize that most interactions are theater, you start to notice something else: the silence. Silence becomes your ally. And that terrifies others. Because we live in a world where noise is constant: social media, trivial conversations, news designed to provoke reactions. It's all a carefully crafted system of noise, because silence forces you to think, and thinking is dangerous. Schopenhauer didn't just understand this, he lived it. He spent most of his life away from society, immersed in philosophy, music, and contemplation. And it wasn't because he hated people. It was because he understood that the noise of the world only clouds the mind. And this is where most people get it wrong. They confuse solitude with isolation. But there's a huge difference. Being alone is an act of power. It's consciously deciding that you prefer depth over superficiality, quality over quantity. Being isolated, on the other hand, is a curse. It's what someone feels when they want to fit in, but can't. When they strive to be accepted, but never succeed. And here's the irony. The one who desperately seeks acceptance will always be rejected. But the one who rejects it by choice will never truly be alone. Because when you walk your own path, regardless of others' approval, you attract the ones who truly matter. People who think, who question, who don't need to fill every second of their lives with unnecessary noise. Because here's the truth. Intelligence isn't antisocial. It just rejects the banal. Think about it. The greatest minds in history weren't antisocial, but they also weren't willing to waste time in empty conversations. Da Vinci spent years immersed in his work without feeling the need to share every thought. Newton withdrew from society when he realized his way of thinking was too uncomfortable for conventional minds. Tesla worked on his inventions with an obsession few understood, and all of them were seen as eccentric, strange, hard to deal with. Why? Because they didn't fit the norm. They didn't follow the script of ordinary social life. Because here's the secret. Social life is just a series of predictable routines designed to keep you within the system. From the moment you're born, you're taught that being accepted is the most important thing, that you need friends, that you need to be part of a group, that isolation is bad, but no one tells you that most of those groups only exist because of the fear of loneliness, not real affinity. No one tells you that many people with large social circles actually feel empty. No one tells you that the best ideas, the greatest revolutions, the most important discoveries were born in minds that dared to distance themselves from the noise. But there's more, because This is where many people get confused. They think the solution is to completely reject society, that the answer is to become a hermit, disconnected from the world, living in total isolation. But it's not, because true power isn't in escaping the world. It's in knowing when to interact with it and when not to. True power is moving in the shadows when the noise is too loud, but appearing with force when necessary. Think of the great strategists. They weren't always at the center of the battle, but when they appeared, their impact was impossible to ignore. Those who truly understand life are not society's darlings nor fugitives from it. They are silent players. They move their pieces without announcing them. They build in the dark. And when the world finally notices their existence, it's too late. They've already won without needing attention. Schopenhauer said superior intelligence is destined for solid solitude, not as punishment, but as an advantage. Because only in solitude can you truly build something worthwhile. But what happens to those who don't understand this? What happens to those who think happiness only comes from others' approval? What happens is they live trapped in a cycle of dependence. Every photo they post, every story they share, every opinion they express, it's all calculated to get a reaction, a like, a comment, some validation to make them feel they exist. But here's the brutal truth. If your existence depends on others' reactions, then you've never really lived. You're just a reflection of what others expect from you. And that is the opposite of freedom. Because true freedom is not doing whatever you want without consequence. It's not needing anyone's approval to do what you truly desire. It's not depending on noise to feel alive. It's being able to be alone in complete silence without anxiety or the need to fill every void with distractions. And if you can't do that, then you're not free. You're a prisoner of the noise. Schopenhauer understood this better than anyone. That's why he distanced himself from the world, not as an act of rejection, but as a strategy. Because only from a distance can you see reality clearly. Only in silence can you hear your own voice. And if you made it this far, it's because deep down you already knew. You knew that something about modern social life didn't make sense. You knew that many of your interactions were just formalities. You knew that real growth doesn't happen in noise. It happens in introspection. Now the question is, will you have the courage to accept it? Because once you do, there's no going back. Trivial conversations become unbearable. The need to fit in disappears, and all that remains is the truth. The truth that solitude is not a punishment. It is a privilege reserved only for those strong enough to bear it. You can no longer lie to yourself. You can't force yourself to enjoy what once seemed normal. You can't pretend that empty conversations fulfill you or that external validation means anything. And that's the point of no return. It's terrifying because most people spend their lives trying to fit in, making silent sacrifices to be accepted, silencing parts of their essence to avoid disturbing others. But you can't do that anymore, because now you understand something most people never will. Life isn't about fitting in. It's about finding what truly resonates with you and having the courage to follow that path, even if it means walking alone. And here is the most brutal paradox of all. The more you dare to be yourself, the more magnetism you generate. Because people are desperate for authenticity, but very few have the courage to be authentic. And those who do, those who move without fear, those who need no one's approval, those are the ones who end up being followed. not because they seek it, but because true independence is so rare, so authentic, that it's impossible to ignore. And now I ask you, what will you do with this absolute truth? Will you ignore it? Pretend you never saw this message? Go back to routine? Keep fulfilling expectations others imposed on you? Or will you take the harder path? Will you accept the discomfort of being different? Will you embrace the fact that you may never fully fit in? Will you stop betraying yourself just to be accepted? Will you start living by your own convictions, not someone else's? Because in the end, that's what it's all about. Because at the end of the day, the greatest betrayal you can commit is not against others, but against yourself. And you do it every time you silence your voice to please, every time you suppress your thoughts to avoid discomfort, every time you shrink yourself to fit into a mold that was never made for you. But if you've made it this far, if something deep within you stirred as you read these words, then you've already taken the first step, the most important one, the step of recognizing that there is a life beyond the noise, beyond the masks, beyond the constant hunger for approval. And no, it won't be easy. Walking your own path never is. It means losing things, people, environments. It means giving up the comfort of the crowd, the superficial warmth of the familiar. But it also means finding something infinitely more valuable, your truth. That truth doesn't need to be explained or defended. That truth isn't negotiable, and it doesn't wear disguises. That truth lives in silence, manifests through authenticity, and blooms when you're no longer afraid to be alone. Because you understand that solitude isn't emptiness, it's space. Space to grow, to create, to be. And in that space, the transformation begins. You start building a life that doesn't orbit around other people's expectations, but revolves around your own vision. A life that doesn't try to fit in, but to expand. A life that isn't measured in likes, comments, or followers, but in inner peace, clarity of purpose, and the depth of your connection to yourself. The world will try to distract you, no doubt. It will offer you 1,000 ways to numb your mind, to dilute your difference, to convince you that being yourself is a risk. And it is. But it's also the only way to live a life worth living. So when you feel the temptation to go back to the noise, to fit in, to please at the cost of your essence, remember this. True success isn't when everyone claps for you. It's when you can look in the mirror with no regrets, when you can walk in silence but with certainty, when you can sit with yourself in complete stillness and feel whole. That's the power of someone who dares to think, to question, to be. That's the privilege of someone who won't surrender to the noise of the world. And now, the choice is yours. Will you dare to live freely, even if it means walking alone?